Welcome back to another episode of Ask the Attorney. I'm your host, Alex Alexander with Client Focus Media. Today, I'm really excited to bring Ed Ergenzinger from Ergenzinger Intellectual Property Law. They can be found online at ergenzingeriplaw.com. Welcome, Ed. How are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm short, bold, and incredible, and thank you for asking, sir. So Ed, we talked just briefly before we came on, and you have a pretty unique story to tell, and I really want to get into that. The very first thing is I want people to know that your website, obviously, is ergenzingeriplaw.com. Intellectual property law is your specialty. So I want people to understand that you're based out of Raleigh, but for what you do, it's basically it's federal. So anyone that has questions about intellectual property, that kind of stuff, can contact you. Is that correct?
That's correct. Well, patent and some trademark law is primarily federal. So yes, it doesn't really matter that I'm located in Raleigh if you are in Seattle or Kuwait. I have clients all over the world.
Perfect. Excellent. And that's good to know, right? That's perfect to know. So let's get into you a little bit there, Ed. Tell us a little about your story. Talk to us.
Sure. I had a prior professional life before patent law. Most patent lawyers do. You have to be a scientist or an engineer to be able to do this type of law. And I was a research scientist. I got a PhD in neuroscience, then went back to law school. I've been practicing patent law, primarily biotech and pharmaceutical with some medical device stuff, for over 20 years. But I've done patent cases for folks that aren't traditionally biotech and pharma. As I said, I've been doing it for over 20 years. A few years ago, I had to take a break from practice because I had a health crisis, a mental health crisis. I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder. I had a severe manic episode that was responsive to medicine, but that kicked me into a depression that just was intractable. None of the medicines that we were throwing at it were helping me get out of it. And so I wasn't able to practice. I had to go on Social Security disability and just try to get back to where I could function. With medicine and therapy, I've been able to get back into practice. I have transitioned off of disability. Or Social Security disability, and am back practicing law. But I'm also trying to apply my scientific background in neuroscience to write, teach, and speak about mental health issues. Hopefully, from a somewhat unique perspective of someone who's dealing with it themselves, but has had the neuroscience graduate training. So that's really, moving forward, I have the legal practice, but I'm also in parallel pursuing, the mental health education advocacy work that I was describing.
And some of the information that you have available to individuals is also available online, correct? And it's edergenzinger.com. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So, basically, let's pitch this for a second, because I think it's really important. Mental health is always is sort of the topic du jour at the moment anyway, with different things that are going on in the United States and different questions coming up. So I think that it's a really good idea to touch on any point we can about being an advocate for mental health. And you being an advocate, you're an educator, you're a writer, you're a speaker. I want people to understand that where they can find information, again, it's going to be edergenzinger.com. Well, you would be able to find that. I'm sure you could also Google your name and find this under there as well. So the important part is that you're telling us, for you personally, that you are able to use certain therapies, whether it be therapeutics, whatever the case may be, and bring yourself to a point where you are no longer worried about drawing Social Security, that kind of thing. You're actually back in law, which is, I think, incredible. And I want to thank you for sharing that kind of struggle. But now I mean, you're not exactly an uneducated individual, sir. You have you have quite the pedigree behind you, so you're able to share your information with others. I think that's incredible. So let's just for a moment, let's talk about the law firm itself. Okay, who is the individual that's going to be going to ErgenzingerIPLaw.com?
I help clients ranging from individual inventors, the kind of basement tinkerer types, up through, I've represented, Fortune 500 companies and major research institutions. I've been in-house at major research institutions. So it really ranges from your solo inventor, small startup company to big established companies. I've handled across the board.
If I'm
and one other source is, I actually do a lot of work for other attorneys, referrals. They have clients that they handle their, corporate governance or whatever, but they don't have IP expertise, and so they'll refer it to me. Or attorneys outside of the U.S. whose clients want to file patents in the U.S. I, serve as local U.S. counsel for them.
I don't think we as U.S. citizens think about that a lot. We really, unless you're in business, you don't think about much of this at all. But if an individual who, like you had said, if you're an attorney out there and you handle, general practice or even business law, but you don't handle the IP law, obviously it'd be a good idea to look up the ErgenzingerIPLaw.com. I can just get a hold of Ed, period. No matter what happens, get a hold of Ed. And I think that's quite
everything's so specialized. Yeah, everything these days is so specialized, from medicine to law. I mean, I wouldn't do my own will. I'm going to go to somebody who does that every day. I'm not going to rely on what I remember from law school 20 plus years ago. So, I mean, it really does benefit folks. It's hard for you to be a general practitioner who does absolutely everything.
Right.
You tend to have to, refer out and have relationships with experts for certain areas, and patent law is definitely one of them.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. Again, you can't do everything right, completely right. You can do things sort of right, but you can't do everything completely right. So it makes sense if you're in specialized to make sure that you give, if it's IP stuff, give it to you. If it's family law, give it to a family lawyer. Makes sense. And that makes sense to me. So I want to thank you for being on the show today. I want to thank everyone out there for tuning into this episode of Ask the Attorney. If you'd like to learn more about Ed Ergenzinger from Ergenzinger Intellectual Property Law, go to ErgenzingerIPLaw.com or hereitowanabuzz.com. If you'd like to learn more about the other things that Ed does, we have the EdErgenzinger.com, which deals with the mental health. He's a mental health advocate. Thank you guys for doing what you do. Do something good for yourself and do something good for others.